Hello, Walking Dead fanboys and fangirls. I'm here to review The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 3, entitled Four Walls and a Roof. If you like The Walking Dead, please feel free to subscribe right here for more Walking Dead related videos. A few things to notice for this episode that I noticed in this episode. In the room that they end up taking Bob in, there's a picture on the wall. And that picture is made out of wood. That picture is called The Last Supper. You have Jesus Christ in the middle of the dinner table, and on his left hand and his right hand side, you have people arguing at him while he's in the middle of the dinner table. Like I say, that picture is called The Last Supper. Now, that picture is foreshadowing of what happened in this episode with the hunters, because this was the hunters' last supper. Bob Leg was their last supper. Also, something else that I noticed in this episode, when Bob is brought back to the church by the hunters, and Rick and the rest of his group take Bob and pull him into the church, you see Glenn talk to the rest of the group, and he gives them an estimated time on when he think Bob could turn. He tells the rest of the group that it took Jim. Now, Jim is from The Walking Dead Season 1. He had ended up getting bitten by a zombie that night when Andrea's sister had got bitten by a zombie. Well, Glenn tells the rest of the group at the church that it took Jim exactly 2 days to turn. Now, if you notice, Bob is in the same predicament that Jim is in, except Bob can't walk because he don't have his leg. But if you notice something, notice how Bob tries to get up with his back hands, but when he tries to get up, there is so much pain going through his body. It was hard for him to do it. You saw him making noise, trying to get up, when it shouldn't have been that hard. That's because in The Walking Dead Season 1, Jim stated this, and this right here is a fact. When Jim was in Dale RV, they had to stop because Jim was feeling pain. And Rick comes back into Dale RV, and Jim tells him, my bones are like glass. Every little bump, God, this ride is killing me. So when a person get bit, they bones end up turning into this glass field. Therefore, it's like pieces of sharp glass attached to your bones. So inside of your body, you have pieces of sharp glass cutting the inside of your body. It's painful. And Jim stated this in Season 1. And you notice how Jim could not get up. They had to drag him to the tree in Season 1. Notice with Bob. Like I said, when Bob tried to get up, he could not do it because he was in so much pain. It's like his body was getting cut from the inside. It's like he had glass, broken piece of glass within his body, cutting his flesh up. Also, to add, when Rick was talking to Father Gabriel in the church, he was asking Gabriel what happened because he saw markings outside of Father Gabriel's church, and he saw fingernail claw marks outside of Father Gabriel's church. So now he finally wanted the answers, and he finally asked Father Gabriel what happened, and Gabriel ends up telling him what happened. He tells him that he ended up locking everybody outside of the church because he couldn't afford to feed them. He didn't have enough food. He only had enough food for himself. And you notice that Rick didn't really say nothing to Father Gabriel after he said that, because remember in The Walking Dead Season 3, Rick had that same mind perspective. In Walking Dead Season 3, Episode 12, titled Clear, before Rick had went to meet Morgan, he ends up seeing a stranded guy walking on the middle of the road with some bags on his back. Now remember, Rick ends up passing this guy up when the guy was clearly asking Rick for help. Rick and Michonne and Carl ends up passing this guy up. And then later on in the episode, Rick ends up seeing the same guy that they passed up, except this time, this guy is dead. And Rick ends up taking his bags and stuff off of his back while he's dead, and they take the bags and put them in the car, and they end up driving off. So Rick know exactly what Father Gabriel was going through when he was telling him that. That's why he never judged them about it. I noticed thing I noticed in this episode when they had brought Bob back to the church after he had got his leg amputated. Bob ends up telling everybody how he got bit. He shows everybody the bite mark, and he tells everybody that I had got bit when I had went on the food supply run. And you can tell that by Rick's face expression, because Rick put Rick puts his head down and looked the other way. Rick felt guilt about what he had did because he know he was the one who told Bob to come with him to make that food run. So that's why he was so hell bent on getting the termites now, because he know he played a major role in getting Bob bit. And another thing that I noticed in this episode, that Michonne has gotten her katana sword back. Now, that scene had a lot of symbolism to it, because I remember in some prior episodes, Michonne was talking about how she feels so free and so good about not having to have a sword. And she also tells Rick she happy she don't have it, because now she's able to live and not survive anymore. It's the difference between living and surviving. She was surviving. She had to defend herself with that sword, but now she ends up getting the sword back. And the way she looked at the sword was definitely symbolism of telling her that it's time to survive again. You are not safe. Don't matter. It don't matter how you look at it. You are not safe. It's time to survive again. Also, in this episode, the tainted meat part with Bob and Garrett. Bob ends up justifying what he's doing in terms of eating humans by telling Bob that in all actuality, he wanted Rick and the rest of his group to join him. But he said they never gave him that option to propose that opportunity to them. And then he goes on to say that it really doesn't matter. And he used a bear as an example. He says if the bear ends up eating its cub, it doesn't matter because it can have more. Pretty much implying he was going to ask Rick to join him, but if he didn't want to join, it doesn't matter because we can always find somebody else or ask somebody else who might want to do it. Or if they don't agree to it, we'll end up killing them. Also, in this episode, you will notice zombies at a kindergarten or a preschool was stuck inside the building. And you can see Garrett put his hand on there. He said that this window will crack pretty soon. We saw in this episode, zombies cracking that window. We saw a crack in that window. So this might be some foreshadowing of them might having to leave Father Gabriel's church anyway, because the zombies might end up coming their way. We already know they're going to leave anyway because Daryl has lost Carol. So now they're going to look for Carol. And in this episode, Abraham and the rest of the group ends up leaving. And they also made a deal that if Abraham helped Rick and the rest of Rick's group, some of Rick group members will join them to go to Washington, D.C. And that deal definitely went through. Also, with the Bob tainted meat scene, you see Bob laughing at the rest of the termites because they realize they have eaten tainted meat, and you see Bob reveal to them that he had got bitten, and he ends up laughing, and Garrett ends up kicking him in the face. But also within that scene, there could be some foreshadowing. You see Garrett go by the window that have a whole bunch of zombies within that place that window was attached to. Now it's revealed by Father Gabriel that it's a preschool. They have a whole bunch of zombie kids in there. Garrett go by the window, he touched that window, and then he ends up saying that window or those zombies are bound to bust that window open pretty soon. So there might be some foreshadowing of the zombies getting out of school pretty soon. That might cause some type of danger to the rest of the group that's still at the church. It also, in this scene, Garrett tries to justify his wrongdoings, and he also tells Bob that I wanted y'all to join me, but y'all forced my decision to go the different way, because he wanted Rick and the rest of the group to join him. He said I wasn't going to harm y'all, but Rick forced my hand. And then he tells Bob that, or he tried to compare his situation. He tried to compare his situation that he had with Rick to a bear, saying that when the bear eats its own cub, the bear has to stay alive, because if the bear stay alive, they can reproduce another cub. So why worry about it? And he used that as an example to compare to the Rick situation. Okay, Rick can come to tournaments and he can go against us and we can end up eating him, killing him and eating him. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we can get another person that might join us. So that's what he meant by the cub, the bear part. Also, in this episode, the hunters end up going into Father Gabriel's church. and end up getting brutality. I mean, murder, a brutality murder. They got slaughtered in Gabriel's church. Now I'm gonna tell you how Rick set them up. Now remember, in the beginning of the episode, we saw Rick, we saw Tyrese, and we saw Sasha in the woods. Sasha had her scope and she had night vision on, and she was looking at one of the termites going through the woods. Now you have the front of Gabriel's church. Now you have a sign. Now that sign has Sarah's church, and it has a road going straight down with two paths. You can turn left or right. Now you have the woods on the left side and you have the woods on the right side. Now Sasha was on the left side of the woods. When she was in the woods, because we saw her in the woods with the marking on the tree. Now when Sasha had spotted one of the termites in the woods, it's revealed that they was actually across the dirt road on the right side of the woods, going into the right sides of the wood. Now, notice when Rick and his group left the church to try to set them up to get them or draw them into them, they went right back to the left side of the woods that we first saw Sasha and Tyrese in. Notice they stayed right there in the left side of the woods, and they used Sasha night vision scope, or they used Sasha night vision to see the termites come out the right side. This time when the termites came out the right side of the wood, everybody was with him, even Garrett. So Sasha went right back to the same spot that we saw her at before, and she used her night vision to see them all this time. So all of them came out the woods. That's how they end up catching them. That's how they end up sneaking. That's how they end up going, finding out they went to the church. And also remember, when Garrett opened up the door to the church, or one of his group members did, they literally broke in the church, so they couldn't close the door, so they forgot to close the door also. That's how Rick was able to sneak in on them, because it was also dark in the church. And in this episode, Bob ends up dying. Also in this episode, we end up seeing Daryl Dixon again, but it's revealed that Carol was not with him, and Michonne ends up seeing him. Let's talk about the brutality part. The brutality part was very brutal, because the only two personal kills that was in this episode was Rick and Sasha. I mean, the way Sasha was stabbing that guy to fucking death, that shit was personal, man. The way Rick was stabbing Garrett in the head with that machete for doing what he did to Bob, that was personal, because like I say, Rick feel guilt about Bob getting bit. And also, Rick know that Garrett couldn't be trusted alive, or leaving him alive, because Garrett made it pretty clear that before that, it's nothing personal. A man's gotta eat. And Rick remembered his lines. Now remember the red machete foreshadowing in episode 1, season 5? Guess what? Rick finished him off with the red machete in his episode. And I noticed something. When they had murdered all the termites in the church, you will see everybody looking around. I mean, everybody looks around in fear. Even Sasha. Sasha saying to herself, what did I just do? You see everybody looking in fear, except you see Rick by Sasha. And when everybody is looking at him, Rick says, Rick says, that could have been us. Therefore, that right there was straight symbolism of Rick knowing what he did was wrong. So he tried to justify it. Now, I'm not saying killing them was wrong, but it was brutality. Because even in the comic books, Rick said after he killed the hunters, maybe I went a little bit too far. He did it in this episode. He kept stabbing Garrett in the head with the machete when Garrett was already dead. That was overkill. He killed that man multiple times and didn't give a fuck. So, that's overkill. And Rick knows this. That's why when everybody was looking at him, that's why he said it was either or, that could have been us. He tried to justify, and that's what I mean about humans justifying everything that they do. That's why this world is so corrupted. And I'm not saying Rick is corrupted, but that's what I mean. He justified it when he know he was wrong. It was bad. He could have easily killed those people, but he chose the overkill. He went far, and Sasha knows she did, because that was a personal kill. Even Tyrese tried to kind of get her to remain the same who she was, but he realized she wasn't that. He even tried to talk to her. He tells her in the room with Bob that that's everybody else but you. You don't have to be like that. And also in this episode, what got me, the death of Bob. In Bob's speech to the sentence to Rick, he tells Rick, nightmares end. They shouldn't end who you are. That was very important because the world they living in is a nightmare. But that shouldn't mean it. That shouldn't mean you should let that nightmare end the good person that you are. That was the meaning of that scene. And also in the ending episode, we see Abraham and the rest of the group leave to go to Washington D.C. Even with he take Maggie and Glenn and stuff with him and tell everybody. And they leave Rick at the church, and he ends up leaving a map with telling Rick I'm sorry, and end up leaving a sign to go to Washington D.C. And also we see Tyrese burying the dead, even burying Garrett. And I'm surprised they was burying Garrett too. It was a couple of bodies piled up. We saw Rick digging more than one hole, so some type of guilt was in that because Garrett did beg for life before he died. So that was the end of the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. God bless and peace.